Well, good evening and welcome to another episode of the Baseball Bums. This is episode number 18, but the very first on WANT Radio. So a big shout out to anyone listening to us in Radioland. I'm there playing the oldies every Sunday afternoon as Benny the Jet, but here on the Bums, I am Benny Scala, a.k.a. The Playa. Now, you may know me from that low-budget adult film, He's Coming Into His Own. And if we may be bums, but I am joined by the Lord of Loafing, the great Jimmy Pharaoh. Jimmy, how are you, my friend?
The Lord of Loafing. The doctor just told me I have to stop standing on my feet 16 consecutive hours a day. The Lord of Loafing.
What is that? What do doctors know?
Yeah, that's a bit misrepresentative of
I know.
Move on. I want to go back to being the Bone Vivant or whatever you had me be.
Okay, well, yeah. What would be the Bone Vivant of what was it? I forgot.
I can't remember.
Oh, Bumbometrics, I think.
Yeah, possibly.
I like that. Well, Ron Shaw still uses the Earl of Upset. We'll stick with that one. Jimmy, we're going to do something a little bit different today. Yeah. We're going to cover several topics. So we're going to compare 4 of the most maligned players in recent history. Then we're going to look at all the all-time great baseball managers. And finally, we're going to take a look at every team that has moved or folded in the past 100 years. Wow. Are we ready for some baseball?
Yeah, we got a full docket. Let's go.
We sure do. All right. So here we go. Let's take a look at Kong. Dave Kingman.
Love him.
So we're going to look at him. We're going to look at Adam Dunn.
Oh, yeah.
We're going to look at Rob Deere.
I sense a pattern. Go on.
And we're going to look at Joey Gallo. Jerry Callow. So
there's a pattern. Very nice, these baseball cards.
Yeah, all 4 of these guys they've been criticized, right, as being one-dimensional players. Home run or strikeout.
Very true. Very true. Very true.
But we're gonna break it down like we do everything else, and we're gonna figure out of these 4 who is the best ball player. So I'm gonna read you their stats, Jimmy, because I know your eyes aren't really, neither one of our eyes are very good. I think mine are marginally better.
Thank you. I need prescription sunglasses. I told you before we started.
Yeah,
they're very expensive. Probably I'm gonna have to work extra.
I think for a birthday present, I'm gonna go to Lens Crafters or one of those places and get my eyes checked out. It's been a while, but now Kingman hit 236. Yeah, he hit 442 dingers. At that 1,210 ribbies. Very low on base percentage. 302. Sure. Very surprising. Slugging 478.
Okay.
Not on base plus slugging. No, slugging is good.
Yeah, of course his slugging is good. He's a slugger.
Right.
I love it. To me, it's just I stick to the very basics for the most part. The on-base percentage doesn't surprise me too much. And let me tell you, those were walks by accident. Dave Kingman was up there to hit a home run. That's what he was up there to do. I don't know for sure if he was ever given a ring, or if the players voted to give him a ring in '77 because he was on 4 teams that year, right? He came in the last couple of weeks of the season and really helped them. They only won the division by 2.5 games, and he knocked out 4 home runs and 8 RBIs, and he was really good for us. And I wonder if he ever got got the ring, even though he couldn't be on the postseason roster because he came after the deadline. But now, Kingman was a star. He was a star, as we discussed previously. He was
3-time All-Star.
It would have been nice if he had showed up for my partner. My partner, when he was a kid, I think was expecting to see him somewhere in our hometown. He was supposed to be somewhere, and I don't think he showed up. And that had to be very disappointing. So I don't know if that's, really how Dave Kingman was, but he certainly was that day. You got to show up. Kids are looking to see you. It's the mid-'70s. The guy was very polarizing. I liked him from afar. I was a Yankee fan. Yeah, I was a Yankee fan. I was like 10 years old. My father was just starting to take me to the park, and I loved Reggie. But Dave Kingman was very interesting to me. I was like, okay, he's cool. Those low batting averages back then, like today, for example, 236, Kong is probably an all-star. Look at the batting averages that the teams have nowadays, Dave Kingman, was Dave Kingman an all-star?
3 times.
There you go. The batting average never really bothered me much when Kingman played. I found it laughable later on how guys could get a career out of it and not be Kingman must have been a real jerk behind the scenes because obviously he was never thought of more than he probably should be remembered a little bit better than he's being remembered, if you know what I'm getting at, Benny.
Yeah. And he did, Jimmy. He had that one season, the 79 season with the Cubs,
Yes.
where his line
Yes.
is 48, 115, but surprisingly 288.
I thought Dave Kingman
Which,
was a
I
good
mean, great
listen,
batting average.
it's not going to be popular to say it, but I think Dave Kingman was a good baseball player. You don't play as many years as you do and get 442 home runs and get 3 All-Star games. And yeah, sure, he did hit 288 that one year, but that was obviously the exception. But what wasn't the exception was is for years and years and years, you could pencil Dave Kingman in for 30 plus home runs. And it wasn't just the home runs, it was how he hit them. We've discussed that too. He would hit orbit shots, like moon shots. Some people hit home runs
They were
and
tracked by
some
NASA.
people yeah, and some people hit moon shots. And Dave Kingman was such a big guy, and you know what's really awesome? That guy didn't take steroids. That really was almost like the Bugs Bunny cartoon where somebody comes out of the woods with an axe and picks up a tree trunk to swing as a baseball bat. The guy he was
Right.
Kong. He was Kong
Yeah.
Kingman. You know, I loved when he was a Yankee for those few weeks. I was so excited. I was like, oh my God, we got Dave Kingman. We had a lineup. And yeah, we went on to win the World Series anyway. But the lineup in those last couple of weeks had Reggie. Greg Nettles with his power, and yes, Greg Nettles during that time period, he had just come off leading the American League in home runs in '76. So you got Reggie, you got Nettles, you got Kingman, and Kingman was bombing home runs for those couple of weeks. I was like, wow. I was so disappointed when my father explained to me about the deadline and that Kingman couldn't be on the postseason roster. I was like, oh, you know. Dave
Yeah.
Kingman was a good ball player. Okay, I'm sorry his batting average wasn't, and he wasn't Mattingly in the field, but his job was to hit home runs, and apparently that was good enough to be employed by major league teams for how many years, Benny? Long time.
Let's see.
Played a long time.
Um, Kingman played for 16 years. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, it wasn't a cup of coffee. Wasn't a cup of
16
coffee. And
years
and oddly
and
enough,
7 teams.
oddly enough, and if I'm wrong, you got to correct me. But Kingman's final year, he's still hitting home runs and knocking in runs. So I don't understand what happened there, because all of a sudden the next year he's not employed. So after 16 seasons and he's still hitting 30 plus home runs, I really do think that was
Right.
So I think they wanted to stop him from hitting 500 home runs, because if you hit 500 home runs, you're in. And Kingman, in his 16th year, I think he still had 30
Yes.
plus home
No,
runs.
absolutely. No, he hit 35 bombs and drove in 94 runs in
Right.
1986 as a 37-year-old for the Oakland Athletics.
And then all of a
30,
sudden,
35, 94, and you're out of baseball the next year? That's
right.
kind of odd, though,
No,
isn't it?
no, they stopped him. They stopped him. They didn't want him to get to 500. It's got to be, you know, because let's face it, when Dave
I
Kingman
mean, he
came to
hit 210, but so what? I mean, that's some excellent run production.
it's fantastic. At the end of the day, that's what he was getting paid to do anyway. His batting average is abysmal, but everything else matches the Dave Kingman profile.
You were paid to hit
Yeah,
homers and knock runs in. You hit homers and you knock
right.
runs in. And let it be
Yeah,
known that he actually placed in the top 25 of the MVP voting 5
yeah,
different times. So not a
yep.
fluke.
No, no, nothing fluky about Dave Kingman. Dave Kingman made you keep the channel right where it was too. He was one of them, like Strawberry.
Right.
When Strawberry came into the league, you want to see him when he's hitting. It was or Canseco and McGuire when they were the Bash brothers in the early days. You don't change the channel.
Well,
You know,
well, I
it
mean,
was one of
if I was watching TV and the Mets were on, I would,
yeah,
I'd mess around and see if
yeah.
Kingman was up. And if Kingman was up, I'm not changing the channel.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, I did wind up watching a lot of Met games back in the day because we would visit my grandparents often in Brooklyn. It was always a special trip, but I had my own room to watch a TV and a color TV. It was very exciting back in those days, folks. And sometimes the Yankees weren't on that day, so if the Mets were on, I'd watch it. I enjoyed it a lot. The Mets were bad, but I loved baseball, and I found the Mets, interesting. After all, the Dodgers and the Giants had played here, and here was their replacement, and I found it interesting. I liked Leslie Nielsen. I like the Jackets. I keep going back to the Jackets.
Oh yeah. Oh
Sorry.
yeah. So
You know.
I did not realize, Jimmy. When I do the research for these shows, like every once in a while I'll get a reminder. But Adam Dunn hit 462 bombs, same
Wow.
average, 237,
Wow.
1168 ribbies. Better on base was 364, not bad.
Much better.
Slugging
Much better.
percentage 490. His OPS is 854, the highest of the four, and his wins against replacement is 17.9. The guy hit 40 home runs 6 years in a row.
Is this just another case of batting average situation? Because obviously, look, if Adam Dunn retires with even maybe a 260, 270 batting average, I bet you some folks are talking about how he should be in the Hall of Fame. And when you start to
Yeah.
break that down, do you realize the microscopic differences that we really do judge this all on when it comes to batting averages? And yeah, they do make a difference. It's fascinating when I'm pointing it out that we get on the case of somebody. Let's say you get to the plate 100 times and you get 24 hits, and then there's somebody who gets 27. Okay, so 3 more times in 100 at bats, somebody got 3 more hits than you.
Yeah,
That's
it's a
Do you realize
very
how?
fine line.
Yeah, do you realize how fine that line really is? Um, Dunn's numbers are actually they're outstanding outside of the batting average.
Yeah,
These guys all
he
struck out a kabillion times too. Let that
he
not be
struck.
lost
So
here.
like the years he hit 40 home runs, he struck out. Let's see, 195, 168, 194, 165, and then
Right.
164.
See,
But he
that's
did
the
walk over. He walked over 100 times each year.
Yeah, well, you better be walking him. He's probably going to hit one over the fence if you don't, or he'll
Right.
strike out, or he'll
And
strike out.
he,
That's what all these guys are.
he
That's
drove
why
in
we put this
runs.
together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty consistent. Made 2 All-Star teams and 1 top 25 in MVP. So Kong
Hmm.
was a little bit more consistent.
Oh, I think Kong was better. If I have to pick one or the other, I'm still going to go with Dave Kingman. I think Dave Kingman is the blueprint for who we're discussing tonight.
Yeah, because I don't think the other 2 guys had shorter careers. Rob Deere, I think he only played 13 seasons, 220 average, 230 homers, 600 ribbies, 324 on base. Yeah, lower average, about half the home runs of these guys. Can't
What was
really
Deere's
can you
lifetime? What was Deere's lifetime batting average again?
220.
220. Wow. Yeah, Rob Deere, I used to kind of chuckle at, but he had a couple of really big seasons at least, right? He couldn't have hung around that long without
He
doing
had
a
a
few
no.
things.
He was out of baseball pretty young. Let me take a quick look. See here.
13 seasons isn't a cup of coffee, though.
No, 13 seasons. He was done at age 30. All right, he was last season. He played 93. He played for the Red Sox and the Tigers, and then he came back in 96 for a cup of coffee with the Padres. So he was essentially
Right.
done in 93 at the age of 32. He had, for a stretch there, he was 33, 28, 23, 26, 27, 25,
Huh?
32.
Nice.
Consistent. Knocks in about between 75 and 90 runs, strikes out a
Right.
kabillion times. One
Yeah.
season he actually hit in 1991 for the Tigers, hit 179. Yikes.
I remember that year.
No All-Stars. No,
No.
yeah, no All-Stars, no MVP for him. And I think the
No.
worst is Gallo with a 194 career average,
Oh,
208 homers, only 453 ribbies. To
wow.
hit that many homers and have that few ribbies,
Yeah, you
yeah.
better have at least 600
Now he
plus,
was,
agreed?
oh
Wow.
yeah,
You know what's amazing
yeah. I
though
mean,
too? It
Kingman
shows.
had 442, 1210.
Yeah, well, it shows that as baseball allegedly evolves over the years, because each we compare each one, we're doing this almost chronologically. I mean, how can you have a career 194 batting average and be around that long to get over 200 plus home runs? It shows where baseball's regressed to me with all this talk of launch angles, and I don't see how you could even have a career that long.
Well, what's his, our guy Adam Boone? He kept putting him in the lineup, right? I mean,
Yeah, yeah, that was a miserable experience. I actually did feel bad for Joey Gallo
Well,
because
so
I
here we
knew
go.
I
Go
knew
ahead.
Joey Gallo wanted to be a Yankee. I did feel bad that he failed miserably.
All right, in 2 seasons for the Yankees, parts of 2 seasons, played 140 games, 25 homers, 46 ribbies, batting average 159.
Wow.
159. And that's 501 at bats.
Yeah, that's a pretty good sample, right, bud?
And the only team he for 7 years for the Rangers, he hit 211. So but hit 159 for the Yankees, 177 in 1 year for the Twins, 1 year for the Nationals, 161, 1 year for the Dodgers, 162. I mean, that is abysmal with a capital
Yeah.
A.
Yep.
But how much money do you think he got paid
Probably more
over
than
those
everybody
years?
else. Probably more than everybody else
Yeah.
here,
Now,
right? Wow.
in the spirit of transparency, he did win 2 Gold Gloves.
He did.
So
Okay,
he
so
so he had that going for him.
he could field. All right. How many years
So
was
what
his major league career?
Gallo 10.
Is he trying to
Yeah, he
pitch
did.
now?
Nobody
Did I
signed him
read
this
that?
year.
Did I read that somewhere? He's trying to pitch, trying to get his way back into the majors.
It could be. I mean, he wouldn't even be a good hitting pitcher. Well,
No,
not that he needs to be anyway, right?
not anymore. No.
Right.
Hey,
So
did
who
you
do
like that?
we give the nut?
Real quick, buddy. Did you like that when the National League got the DH thing going?
I don't know. I mean, I was always a fan of watching the pitcher hit,
Yeah.
and there were some good ones back in the day. I mean, what's his name? Catfish Hunter, I think. One season for Oakland, he hit like 350.
It still
There was
was an automatic out for the most part, though, Benny. Let's be honest. From what I
yeah.
remember, the pitcher would come up, it would be like a wasted out. It's like, yeah.
I
So
mean,
I understand why
some
the.
were better than others. I mean,
Yeah,
like Tom Seaver was not a bad hitting pitcher. You had like Don
right.
Drysdale, he hit 7 home runs 1 season, I think. So did
Yeah,
Mike Hampton for the Mets, I believe, or the Astros. I'm
yeah.
sorry.
I wanted to get this in, too. I wanted to say that even though we don't think that Otani is everything that a lot of his internet fans say he is, when they put him above a Babe Ruth, which we have both found laughable on record. I will say this. Recently, there was a little bit of a problem between the Padres and the Dodgers where, the Padres superstar was struck with a pitch and then they hit Otani. I don't know if you saw that, Benny, or if you're aware of that.
I heard that. Yes, I heard there was
Yeah.
what's his name? Manny Machado made some comments and
Well,
sounded
he
like
always does. Yeah.
yeah.
Manny always does. Manny's always been in the middle of shit. So Manny's a shit talker and Manny's, likes to get in fights and stuff. That's fine, by the way. That's his deal. But what I wanted to say about Otani is that when Otani was drilled, and he was drilled nicely, by the way, he was drilled, he immediately put his hand up to his dugout like, it's cool. I'm good. It's cool. Like immediately, like, to try to make sure that they didn't have a Pier 6 brawl. And
Interesting.
You see Otani basically trying to be the gatekeeper of peace, which I found very admirable and very surprising. And he winds up shaking hands. I do believe during the whole thing with the other guy who had been drilled. I think it was Tatis Jr. that had been drilled on the Padres. So I was like, wow. I was very impressed with his makeup. Let me put it that way. I was very impressed with that. Is he Babe Ruth? Oh, hell no. But that was very impressive to see, and you don't see enough of that. It's an exemplary thing he did as far as athletic perception to a fan. That was great.
Right. So who do we give the nod? Do we give the nod to Kingman here? I'm voting
Yeah,
for
oh yeah,
Kingman.
yeah, oh yeah. It's definitely Kong. I mean, it's the guy I would want. It's the guy that I actually saw during a postseason run. Again, he's an asterisk, just like poor Roger was for years, but he is one for the '77 Yankees. That was a pennant race, and it was only 2.5 games at the end of the day. And when he came in, they needed him, and he did great. Uh, I want him first. I want Dunn obviously second to Greed.
Yeah, it's pretty close. I still would. I mean, if I had to pick, I'd pick Kingman.
Yeah, And you know what? Should we give it to Joey Gallo because he won a couple of Gold Gloves over Rob Deere? I can't go with it. What is it? A 194 career batting average, though. I mean, does it really
195.
matter? Does it matter enough? I mean, that Rob Deere is we take Rob Deere over Joey Gallo?
Is the Mendoza line that sacred? I guess is what you're asking, right?
Well, what I'm asking is am I getting Joey Gallo in like when he was having a Gold Glove season? Because if I am, then I'm gonna roll the dice and live with the 26 points in percentage points because they're both horrendous average hitters anyway, and I'll take my risk because he's gonna get me a Gold Glove. So I'm not going to put Joey last. I mean, part of me wants to, but I'm not going to do it. He at least won Gold Gloves. Look, he's the only one on this list that won Gold Gloves.
Right, right.
You know, I'm not going to put him above Kong and Dunn for obvious reasons. Those guys were 400 plus home run guys. They probably both could have hit 500. You know, Dave was clearly blocked in my mind. You don't cut off a guy with 35-94 or whatever it was you read to me. You know, where he's going to clearly clear 500 home runs, and then all of a sudden he's out of the league. You're not going to sell that to me, you know?
Right.
No way.
Yeah. No,
Yeah,
I
so
agree.
I'm comfortable with that. I feel like Deere goes in last place.
Yeah, and rightly so. So let's move on. And I know you can't read this, but I
Oh God, what is that?
I have transcribed this. So we're looking at the winningest managers of all time.
Okay.
I'm going to read them all to you, Jimmy, real quick. And then I'll read. So it'd be the name, how many years they managed, how many wins, and then how many World Series. All right.
Sure.
All right. Number one is Connie Mack, 53. Ooh. Wow. Years of managing, 3,731 victories and 5 World Series. Second place, Tony La Russa, 35. 2854, 3 world championships. John McGraw, 33, 2763, 3. Bobby Cox, 29, 2504, and 1. But the advantage of Bobby Cox is Bobby Cox's wife wears a sweatshirt and it says, "I love Cox." So
nice.
Fifth is Joe Torre, 29, 23, 26, 4. First active manager, Bruce Bochy, 28 seasons, 2207, 4. Next is Sparky Anderson, 26, 2194, 3. Of course, in both leagues. Right. The next, Baker, old timer, I guess, did 26. Not really an old timer, but 26. I guess he is an old timer. 26, 21, 83, and 1. Bucky Harris with 29, 21, 58, and 2. Joe McCarthy, 24, 21, 25, and 7. Walter Alston, 23, 2040, 4. Leo, 24, 2008, 1. Terry Francona, active, 24, 1989, and 2. Of course, Charles Dillon Stengel, 25, 1905, and 7. Gene Mock, 26, 1902, and 0. None. Walt McKechnie, back in the day, 25, 1896, and 2. Sweet Lou Piniella, 23, 1835, and 1. Jim Leland, 22, 1769, and 1. 19th place, Buck Showalter, 22, 1727, 0. And last, Mike Scioscia, 19, 1650, and 1. So let me tell you who's not in the Hall of Fame. But a lot of these people, I think it's just a matter of time. So Bochy, Baker, and Francona, I think it's just a matter of when they stop managing, right?
They'll all be in the Hall of Fame. Agreed.
Right? Can they not be? Yeah.
Huh? Yeah. Right. No, they all go in.
Yeah. So Gene Mock will never get in the Hall of Fame.
No.
I don't think.
No.
Buck, I don't think Buck will get in the Hall of Fame.
No. Buck needed to get that ring. I'm glad Buck is on the list, though. I was waiting to hear his name. He has done a lot of things in this league, and he has set up a lot of teams for a championship that he never got to be there for.
I think Buck is a very solid manager. You know, His
he's an
stats are
excellent manager.
misleading because he's barely at 500, which doesn't sound good on the surface. But what you have to consider is he built a lot of teams, and you're gonna have a losing record in the beginning.
He inherited garbage everywhere he went. By the time he was gone, they were one step away from winning a world championship. That's what Buck
Right,
Showalter basically did, and he did it with the Mets too. Even
right,
for a season, he did. He did. He came in and he fixed the fucking shitstorm. Pardon my French,
right.
but he
No,
did.
no pardon needed. Mike Scioscia, no way. I don't think so.
What, Hall of Fame?
Why would he?
I believe it
Yeah,
or not, I do think that Mike Scioscia is going to be in the Hall of Fame as a manager.
you do.
Yes, I do.
He's got
I
the
do.
one World Series.
I understand he has won World Series, but I also know that he's a great manager and has been a great manager for a very, very long time. He's not a good manager.
Yeah. Well, I
He's a
guess we'll
great.
see then. I don't. We're gonna
He
disagree on that one, but
Yeah,
I mean,
I
we'll
think
see. We'll see.
that he will. I actually do think that he will as a manager. How long has he been doing this now, Benny?
He
Consecutively,
did it for 19 seasons.
consecutively, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. What was his winning
all at the same.
percentage? And he didn't always deal with a Yankee budget either. What was his winning percentage?
Well, that's the one thing I got to look up here.
Okay.
But it'll only take me a second.
Yeah, I mean, for some reason, I look at Mike Scioscia and I say, yeah, he is a Hall of Fame manager. And he does have the one ring. It's not. It's a different day and age. It's not the day and age of free agency where managers could somehow do what they did, and we'll get to those managers, of course. But it's not the same in post free agency for the most part, unless your name is Joe Torre. You're not walking around with that much hardware if you're a manager post free agency.
Right. So let's. All right. Scioscia, 1650 and 1428, 536 winning percentage. Not bad. I'm going to
With
tell
the
you how many
Angels,
times he made the postseason.
with the
Right. All
Angels,
19
come
seasons with
on.
the Angels. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. He made it to the postseason 7 times.
Yeah. Look, to me, it's the body of work. He's not as great as Lou Piniella, who's a Hall of Fame manager in my mind. They got to stop screwing him. But I feel like his 19 years of service, his championship. Look, I know what it was like to sit through a game when we played the Angels. He's one of those managers that just makes his presence known. That's a great manager. Mike Scioscia is a great manager. I feel like he did it long enough. He did it long enough, and he's got the hardware. He did win a ring. The Angels weren't supposed to do that year. You know whose hopes and dreams they crushed, don't you? They crushed
Yep.
Bonds and Kent. I mean, wasn't that 2002? Correct. I mean, what are we talking here? That was. I don't know. I feel like he did
Well,
enough.
Jimmy,
Scioscia.
here's a pretty amazing stat though. The guy is
Yeah.
consistent. He never
Yeah.
lost. He never lost more than 88 games in a single year. So he didn't have that 50 and 112 season.
No, he never did. You weren't going to have it on his watch. Look, there's also a Parcellian thing to him that I always loved. I love hard-ass managers. I love them. Billy Martin should be in the Hall of Fame. He's not on this list. I don't care. I don't care. It's irrelevant. Billy Martin not only did what we talked about Showalter doing, Billy Martin went to multiple teams and fixed them. Look it up. Multiple
Oh
teams,
yeah,
and you know that, Ben. He fixed them.
Detroit, Minnesota, the Yankees,
Yeah,
the
the
Rangers,
A's,
you name
Billy
it.
Ball. The A's were a train wreck when Billy got there. Turns into Billy Ball, and they make the play. Come on, Billy Martin was a winner, and a genius, and a great Yankee. The numbers retired. The guy should be in the Hall of Fame. Stop it, stop it.
Well, so
I'm getting.
we we're kind of, you think Scioscia? Yes, I think probably not. But now the one other person that I have not mentioned,
Yeah,
which I think is a crime, is Lou Piniella.
Lou Piniella should be in the Hall of Fame. It's a joke.
Right.
Absolute joke. Not just for his accomplishments with the Reds, and that was another shocker. The Reds weren't supposed to do that. They swept Canseco and McGuire. They swept the defending world champions. They swept them. And it wasn't a clubhouse of harmony because isn't Lou and Rob Dibble like main eventing WrestleMania in the locker room?
Yeah, that's right.
You know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah.
you got all these strong personalities, and Lou is another one, like a Scioscia, like a Billy Martin. There's a pulse. You know that every game Lou is in the dugout, Lou's presence will be felt. Lou Piniella was one of the greatest and he was great with the Yankees too, by the way. Look up his record when he was managing the Yankees. They were winning. They were winners. The Yankees fell into that 4-year dark hole after Lou left, and we tried to get Bucky in there. That failed miserably. And then the great Stump Merrill, the minor league legend, Stump Merrill, but not in the majors. Oh, God. So anywhere that Lou went, Lou did a great job. Seattle has the nerve to break
Well,
the
and
114 win record by the 98 Yankees. He's got the
correct me
nerve
if
to
I'm
do that.
wrong, but Lou is in constant demand, right? He was very
Yeah.
gainfully employed for a quarter of a century.
How
So
would you
he had
not
to be
want
doing
him?
something right.
How would you not want him? And as a ball player, and it does translate. I mean, as a ball player, Lou was a high average hitter with rings.
Right.
He was a fantastic hitter. So it's like, you know how hard he played. He got into plenty of brawls with the Yankees. I remember him. Was it him and Fisk? For God's sakes, they had something at home plate. Oh boy, Lou was a fiery guy, like the infamous story when George wanted the Yankees. It's funny how they finally changed it decades later, but George wanted the Yankees to all have that clean cut and the hair cut short, and Lou didn't like it. Lou's like, well, Jesus had long hair, and the conversation was at a resort swimming pool. So George said, okay, Lou, walk across the water like Jesus did, and you can keep your long hair.
There you go.
Lou was always fiery and competitive, always asking why and always looking for an improvement on the why. So, that's the kind of guy you want running your club.
Well, Lou's not taking any days off either. I mean, that man was
No.
intense every single day.
Yeah, exactly. He was intense and passionate about everything he ever did. Everything. And rarely cautious. Rarely cautious. He was willing to take chances. That's another great thing about managers. They'll do something out of the box. That's the trouble we have a lot with today's managers. Everything's become so analytical that everything is predictable now and boring. There's no thinking outside the box, like when a Billy Martin would have Dick Tidrow pitch 5 2/3 in a postseason game. Pull the starter early because he's off and just let this guy go and go and go and go. Or Sparky Lyle,
Right.
who's a closer. That was even better example with Sparky Lyle. Sparky Lyle's the closer. He brings him in a playoff game and he lets him pitch basically the rest of the game. And it's early in the game when he brings the closer in. The gut read is gone nowadays. Everything's about the pad and the pencil instead of the brain and the gut.
But I liked when Lou was manager down here for the Rays, and I remember one time it was
Why
during
wouldn't you?
spring training.
Yeah.
A spring training game, and they're interviewing after the game, and he broke it down like it was like the 7th game of the World Series. I mean, like, this guy is intense.
Well, you're supposed to be. That's
Right.
that's how my band treated band practice. When we were at practice, unlike Allen Iverson, who I thought was hilarious about practice, but to me, when the band would practice, those practice sessions were not goofing around. They were actually playing the full show that we planned to do that weekend at whatever club we were at, exactly like how we were going to do it when we got to that club. So yeah, Lou Piniella gives that much of a crap about an exhibition game in preseasons, because he wants them to be exactly how they're going to be when the season starts. So it's
No,
very
yeah, I
important,
mean, how you
it's very
play is,
important.
I mean, how you play is how you practice, right? I mean,
Yeah, you're not running a bowling club. I remember at points with Herman Edwards and Rex Ryan years later with the Jets, it was like it turned into like the bowling club. Oh, it's okay, guys, we're losing, but it's like, no, it's not okay. It's never okay. When Bill Parcells is pointing out that the other team's ball boys are faster than ours and he wants that fixed, that's the guy I want coaching me. Just like a Lou Piniella, like we're discussing, or a Billy Martin, or
right.
hell, a Buck Showalter. I wish somebody had given Buck Showalter that one more year, whether it was the Diamondbacks, who won the next year he was gone, or the Yankees. But hey, that turned out. I wouldn't change that.
Yeah. No, I hear you. All right, Jimmy, let's do something fun here. All
Sure.
right, we're going to talk about teams that are no longer in their original location, when they moved, and where they moved, and how the new location did. So this is the Boston Braves, and in 1952, the Braves moved to Milwaukee. We talked about this before the show. Their last season in Boston, their home attendance was 281,278, and that was for 77 games. So we did the math, less than 4,000 a game. Pretty hideous, right?
Wow.
The
Yeah, it's
crosstown Red Sox
really sad.
drew 1,015,000, about 4 times as much.
Right. Yeah, the Braves slowly faded away and then had to move. And It's interesting. I was doing some reading up on the Braves, and apparently the Braves won a World Series in Fenway Park. They played in Fenway Park, and I think the year was 1914, Benny. You'd probably have to look it up, but the Braves won a championship when they were at Fenway Park. I wonder if that makes them the first team to win a World Series at Fenway Park. And I wonder if anybody was even going to their games. They must have been, right?
Right.
But what happened to
Yeah.
them over the years? They just fell away.
They call them, what do they call them?
They
Also rans. Yeah, they were like second division. Didn't Casey manage them for a while, didn't he? I believe.
I think you're right. The,
Yeah.
the Braves, obviously, Boston was just one of those cities that couldn't. It's funny too. While the Braves are petering out, we've got the Giants and what they left in the early '50s, right? They leave Boston, correct? In
52.
the early,
Yeah.
yeah.
52.
While that's going on in the city of Boston, they obviously don't are not interested in two teams in their city. The Yankees, the Giants, and the Dodgers are in the process of heading towards 3 straight years where all three of them win championships.
Right.
It's strange, Boston just wasn't a two baseball team town. They just weren't.
But well, they did something right, because the next year in 53, the Milwaukee Braves home attendance 1,826,397, about 6 times higher than than they drew in Boston the previous year.
So you got to explain to me, because I'm pretty sure we're going to go to this next. Why did the Milwaukee Braves? You see, I kind of think that worked. When I see the old great photos of Aaron and Eddie Matthews and the great Milwaukee Braves players and what happened in 57 and 58 with the Yankees in the World Series and stuff like that, I feel like that was working. So what happened to make the Milwaukee Braves, that even the uniform looked cool? It just seemed to fit to me. The cap,
Oh, it
the
was perfect.
logo. Yeah, everything fit. So what made it end? How did they wind
And
up
you
in
had,
Atlanta? Which works too, by the way, because the Atlanta Braves does work. I ain't saying that. It sure as shit works. Pardon my French again, folks. I'm sorry. I'm trying to keep this clean, but you know,
but I mean, rolling into the early 60s, you have Hank Aaron, you have
yeah,
Eddie Matthews, very
sure.
overlooked as a great ball player, third
Oh my
baseman,
God,
and you
of
had
course.
some guy named Warren Spahn, who all he
Right.
did was win 20 games every single season.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, some
What
went
was that?
wrong pretty quick, because we're going to
Yeah,
get
what was
into
that?
when they moved to Atlanta. But so let's
So what
go to the.
happens? How does attendance crash dive? I mean, do they start to really stink during the '60s as far as their record? Does the attendance start to nosedive?
I don't recall the Braves being that bad of a team.
Right.
I mean, any team with Aaron on it, and Aaron was I mean, he was in his prime.
So when they move to Atlanta, what's their attendance at the end there? I mean, they must be sinking, I would think.
Well, yeah, I mean, we'll show it in a little bit, but their last season, which was
Yeah.
1965, so this is only 12 years later,
Right.
555,584. Now, keep in mind, we're now playing 162 game schedule, so now you have
Right.
81 home games. So maybe barely you got what, maybe 6,500 a game, which is hideous for a major league ball
Wow.
team that has Hank Aaron on it in his
It's really
prime.
bad. It's really
Yeah,
bad.
yeah.
Sign
I
of the
mean,
times? I mean, what's going on there that the
but
attendance was.
ironically, then, and we'll get into it. 4 years later, they got another team, right? And we'll get into that. But here are the. I love this. The St. Louis Browns
Oh
never won
yeah.
anything, right? I think they made one World Series. They were in
1944. 1944.
against the Cardinals, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And then the
Benny, it might have
following
gone
year, they
seven.
had
It
a
might have gone. I'm sorry, Benny. It might have gone 7 games too. By the way.
yeah. And then the next year, they had a one-armed outfielder named Pete Gray.
Right.
Remember that?
Yeah.
One
Why do
arm.
I find the St. Louis Browns charming? What is it? Help me out here.
I think it's because, well, I mean, I think number one, we love the underdog, and number two, Bill Veeck was one hell of a promoter. Didn't he? He played some guy that was about 3 foot tall, Eddie Gaedel. I think he pinch hit for the Browns, right?
Yeah, and they walked him because they couldn't get to the strike zone. It was
Yeah.
so
So,
low.
I mean, I should be in the Hall of Fame. His on base percentage is 1,000.
Oh, would you stop that? You stop that. That's funny though.
That was a
Didn't
very quick
didn't
Gorilla Monsoon Bobby Heenan moment, by the way.
didn't the
But
didn't the
yeah,
commissioner didn't the commissioner at the time do something about that though? He was like, okay, we can't
I
have this.
yeah, I think I I mean they definitely banned Gaydell from baseball ever again.
Right. You know something?
I
Not
think
not not for nothing. I do wonder what did the opposing team think about that when it was
I don't
happening
know.
that day? I would have been pissed. Let me tell you something, Benny. I would have been like, "What is this? What is
Yeah,
going
you know
on here?"
what makes it even worse is I heard Bill Vex shorted his paycheck.
Oh, dude. I got to be honest though, bro. If I'm catching, you don't forget, Pharaoh played catcher for a quarter of a century. If I'm catching and I see that coming up to the plate, like what they're having in mind, number one, I'm insulted because you've turned this into a circus. I know what you're doing here. Okay.
The right word is they besmirched the integrity of baseball.
Yeah, yeah, I'm pissed on that level, right? And I'm telling you right now, and I don't care you folks at home, I'm sorry in advance, but I'm walking up to my pitcher and I'm going, hit him, beat him. You're not going to be able to throw a strike to him, dude. You'd have to bowl it.
I
Hit
mean,
him.
yeah, you're gonna walk them. You might as well nail them. You'll save three pitches,
I'm
right?
sorry. I'm sorry. And I'll hammer it home even more. I remember when Roger Clemens got to the Yankees, and in '99, he really wasn't himself yet. He kind of like had a good season. An off season for Roger resulted in 15 wins and shutting out the Braves to clinch the World Series. By the way, this was his getting used to being a Yankee, but he wasn't really Roger yet. When he hit Piazza the following summer, we had a ball game the next day in the morning, and half the team were Met fans, very passionate. Half the team were very passionate Yankee fans. And I just walked up to Bart, very passionate Yankee fan, and I went, "He's back." That was the Roger everybody had been looking for.
Right.
That was the Roger we thought we were getting. And of course, what happened with Roger after that? A Cy Young, another championship, blah, blah, blah. Roger turned into Roger the rest of his Yankee tenure. So yeah, I would have been this guy. I'm sorry. No sympathy. You're getting paid to be a major league ball player right now. You come up to bat, okay. We can't throw a strike to you, like you said, like I
Right. So
suggested.
why waste three baseballs, right? I
Yeah,
mean,
you're getting nailed. And it's 19 whatever year, right? So back then it wasn't like, oh my God, you hit him. That's it. You're canceled. No, we didn't do that back then.
right.
So I would have been like, yeah,
I'm
put one in the
I,
Zelo.
I would say that the umpire would have repressed the chuckle himself if that happened.
Yeah. Yeah, I got to admit, the umpires in my league, especially the great Joe Cohn. Oh my God, you should have seen this guy. This guy was like Ron Luciano on acid. He would have been like, no, go back to the bench. I could see it already. He
Yeah.
wouldn't have even let him get to the plate.
Come back when you grow up.
Yeah, well, I don't know if Joe would have made it personal, but that's a good one.
Yeah. Yeah. But now their last season in 53, their home attendance not much better than the Braves, 297, 238. The Crosstown Cardinals, 880, 242, which I was kind of surprised. I thought it'd be a little bit more than that. But their first season in Baltimore, they draw 1,060,000. So they basically tripled what they drew the year before. So, in retrospect, that was a good move, right?
Yeah, it was a fantastic move. Does Baltimore
71 years later, the Orioles are still there.
does Baltimore recognize the Browns as part of their lineage, or is it one of those
I
where they
think they
don't?
do. I think they do.
It's interesting because there was a couple of St. Louis Browns that I think were probably oh my God level players, weren't there, over all the years? After all, I think they were in St. Louis a very long time, correct?
They were there for 50,
Yeah,
53 seasons, I think.
over half a century. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
sure. I'm sure they had a few great
They
names
had
come through there.
then they have a 42-year-old rookie in Satchel Paige, I believe.
That's a huge contribution to the history of this game. But wasn't there at least one Brown that was like an oh my God name that played for them for many, many years? Why am I thinking Sisler? I could be wrong, Benny. I'm sorry, but I
I think
remember
you thought George Sisler? No, you're dead on.
there was someone
Yeah.
that had played for the
No,
Browns and he's an oh my God level guy.
Sisler had
So
the record for hits, I think, before Ichiro broke it.
right,
Hits
right.
in a season.
Yeah. My father used to talk to me about the St. Louis Browns and the Boston Braves. And I tell you, I would really have loved to have been, of course, I'd probably be gone now, but I would have loved to have been a kid back in the 50s to be a baseball fan. I still feel like the 50s was it. There's many great decades
No,
in the
yeah,
history of
I
this
am
sport,
right
but
there with you.
yeah, put me in
Absolutely.
the 1950s. I'm satisfied. Go ahead.
I never could figure out why it was an elephant, but this is the 1954 Philadelphia Athletics. Their home attendance is 304,666. The Crosstown Phillies, 738,991. And the next season in Kansas City, again, ironic because they're gone 12 years later, 1,393,054. So I think, like you said, it's a good point. I think sometimes, these new cities, they embrace the team
Yeah,
initially, but then
yeah,
it's, they get bored after a couple of years.
they do. Some cities don't sustain it. This is the saddest case so far because the Philadelphia A's were incredible in their contributions towards the history of this game. Connie Mack, for God's sakes, what was that? What was that resume, Benny? 53
53
years,
seasons. Yeah.
5 championships. I myself, I'm not sure why the elephant was the mascot, other than I know that Connie Mack wanted to be the elephant in the room. He wanted to be the biggest team on the field, and perhaps that was just, the logo might have been an end result of how he perceived competition, and he wanted to be the biggest creature on the ball field. Maybe, I don't know, something bizarre like that. Otherwise, like you said, why is there an elephant?
Right. Yeah. Don't know. And then, this is a team that has been, well, by next year, it will be in its fourth
Yeah,
location, wherever Oakland lands. But we'll get into
I
that.
know.
Here's the one that I really wanted to talk about, or actually, is the
Yeah.
next few. You got the Brooklyn Dodgers,
Oh boy.
uh, and you got the New York Giants. Oh, show them both in 1957.
Uh huh.
Now the Giants only drew 653, 923. So that 9,000 a game. The Dodgers drew a
Yeah.
million 28, which not bad.
No.
Um, and then
No.
the Yankees drew 1,497. So you got
Right.
between the three teams, you're
Yeah.
drawing about 3.1 million fans. Now
Right.
attendance picks up, and you made a very good point. I want to give you credit for it. The Giants draw in San Francisco 1,272,000. They double. The Dodgers draw 1,845,000. They almost double, but the Yankees are 1,428,000. So the now my first thought would have been, without thinking, would be, all right. Now there's one team instead of three. The Yankees' attendance is going to go through the roof. But you
Nope.
pointed out that the allegiance to the Dodgers and the Giants was so strong that they didn't decide, I'm going to be a Yankee fan. That didn't
No.
happen.
No.
Yankee attendance did not change.
It wouldn't have happened. Not coming from my point of view. Like I've said, I've always wanted to be a kid in the '50s, watching what happened here in New York. Well, here in New York, as I sit here in Florida, but when we were both from New York, and it was happening in New York, and I would have loved to have witnessed it. No, if you're a New York Giant fan, and considering the Giants and the Dodgers were both there for approximately 80 years when they left, no, you're not going to suddenly become a fan of the Yankees. Your father probably got you into the Giants or the Dodgers if you're from the Manhattan, Brooklyn, Bronx, Queens, Staten Island, Long Island, deal. No, you're not switching. I'm not switching. For God's sakes, when I moved to Long Island in 1979, my father became an Islander fan. I said, no, I'm a Ranger fan. I'll take the cross. I'll carry it. I understand we don't win very often. I don't give a damn. This is the team I root for since I've been thinking about this sport. So, no, neither of them are going to root for the Yankees. I'm sure it was a terrible 5-year period. And gratefully for those National League fans living in the great city of New York, they got the Mets. They got the National League answer. They got to have a team again. That was horrible what happened to those fans. Horrible.
I I think
Especially in
I think
Brooklyn's
the
case,
Mets.
the Brooklyn fans
Yeah, I was
were
going to say.
even more loyal than the Giant fans. They were very loyal, the Brooklyn fans. It could have remained there. It could have. It didn't have to be
Yeah,
that way.
they made the logo for the Mets very similar to the Giants, almost
Yes.
identical, right?
It
And
looks
who do they pick
identical,
as a
but
manager?
yeah. Yeah. It looks
Ex-Brooklyn
identical.
manager.
It looks identical, but what makes the Giants thing, the whole feel of the Giants uniform and cap so cool is the black. It's orange
Yes.
and black. I mean, the Giants look badass to me. The New York Giants. I'm like,
Yeah,
man, that uniform is cool. That cap, that black cap with that logo with the black. Yep, that works. Willie Mays in that uniform, and all those other great Giants that played in that uniform. Yeah, that works. You know, it's odd too to me, Benny, that it was not the team that played in Manhattan that had the allure of the city, for God's sakes, that was getting the attendance even till the end. It was the team from Brooklyn, that small neighborhood, that cozy feel of Ebbets Field that we didn't get to see, but we've read about. The
right.
Brooklyn Dodgers could have stayed. They could have stayed. Ironically, at the end of the day, though, those moves worked out for the franchises. Period. San
They
Francisco is
did. They
firmly in.
did. Yeah, they
You know,
absolutely did.
yeah. It's just it is what it is.
Absolutely. No, it was a win all around. I mean, it was a loss for the people of Brooklyn, of course. I mean, who really were attached. I mean, same for the
Yeah,
Giants. For
it
those,
was.
because yeah,
It was,
I
and the
mean,
Giants were the senior team. The New York Giants were the senior team, even though the Yankees were having all the success. If the lineage passed down in my family had been the New York Giants, I would have been like, yeah, but we were here first, and we're still the team, and I would have felt that way, no matter how many
right.
championships the Yankees were winning, and they would have
Nope.
been right to feel that way.
All right. So here we go. Boy, I wonder how long it took him to design this logo, right? So
Not long.
yeah, 1960 Washington Senators, home attendance 743, 404. So that was an average of about a little bit less, 9,500 ish. Moved to
Right.
Minnesota, 61, draw 1,256,000. A nice boost, another half a
Yeah.
million. But then they put an expansion team in Washington, same year, right?
Okay.
Who draws 597, 287. See, you had shitty attendance. You moved the team to Minnesota, which was a good move, but then you put another team right back where you had shitty attendance, and then you have shittier attendance.
What were they calling that team?
The Senators.
They wait a minute. That's bizarre what you just told me. That's what really happened? That's stupid. What
Yeah,
was
so
that?
the 60 Senators moved to
Yeah.
Minnesota, and then in
Okay.
61 they had two expansion teams. One was the
Okay.
Los Angeles Angels, and the other was the Washington Senators.
So they still believed in the city. Major League Baseball still believed in the city, despite the fact that the team was moving after a kabillion years of being there.
Right.
That's bizarre.
And
How
not
do you?
drawing very well. But
How,
I mean, that's an omen. Your brand new team.
oh,
Now you're playing 81 games. You can't draw more than 7,500 a home game for a brand new team.
right. Well, let's face it. The Washington Senators. That what was it? Outside of 1924 with the great Walter Johnson, if I'm correct about it. I mean, the Washington Senators were a train wreck for decades.
There was a saying, and I can't remember the whole thing. It was like first in politics, first in something else, and last in the American League, because they were
Yeah,
the also run. And
they
once
were.
Johnson retired, yeah, they were
Yeah.
they were the cellar dwellers. They were the bottom feeders for sure. But I just don't get it. Like you why do you, like you said? I guess they were invested. It was it is the nation's capital, and I guess they thought, well, you have to have a team in the nation's capital. This is America's sport,
Right.
but I mean,
It's
they
the
did
most.
not
It's
last
yeah.
very long.
Yeah. No, no. When you think about Washington in general, it is the most bizarre sport territory when you really think about it. Think about the baseball in Washington. Okay, we're discussing the bizarre world of the Senators. The Nationals have won a World Series, but do they really feel like concrete embedded into the Washington? I don't know. There's something off about Washington baseball historically to me. And then you get to the other like basketball. What's the vibe with Washington? What's the Wizards? What are this is the most blasé city is what I'm trying to get at. And when you did have something amazing like, oh, can I dare say the Washington Redskins? Can I dare say that? And then there's something very blasé
Well,
now about that.
Washington is a very politically correct city because remember they used to be
Right.
the Baltimore Bullets, and then they
Right.
called them the Capitol Bullets, but then they renamed them the Wizards because the Bullets was obviously
Right.
offensive. The Redskins are
Right.
offensive.
Right. And they usually don't seem to win anything. I mean, for the most part, that
No.
Nationals championship in 2019 is the exception. But in general, Washington hasn't been anything since Joe Gibbs patrolled the sidelines and they were doing what they were doing back in the 80s and early 90s. It's a weird state. It's a weird city. It's a weird place. And
Yeah. Well,
The Senators, they're really the Browns, but they managed to squeeze one out with the great big train in
yeah.
1924.
Let's see. All right. So Milwaukee Braves. So they had a let's see, how many year run did they have? From 53 to 65. So they lasted 13 seasons. Their
Yeah.
last season. So keep in mind, the first year they moved from Boston, they drew 1,826,000. A dozen
Nice.
years later, they're down to 555.
Wow.
So you're talking like between 6,000 and 7,000 per game. They moved to Atlanta. Now it's 1,539,000, and they're never going anywhere. I mean, they bumped the attendance, but how ironic that Milwaukee loved this team in 53 and 65. Like I said, I don't know if they still had Matthews. I think Matthews was gone.
Right.
Because Matthews, I think, wound up playing a little bit for Houston and a little bit for the Tigers. But he might have still been on the team at 65. But I know Aaron was.
I'm
And he's
trying
still
to
a great ball player, but
I'm trying to understand how this happens, by the way, and I'm actually thinking about the actual time period itself. So you're talking about the 60s, the mid 60s, right? And I'm thinking to myself, at the time, and I can't answer this question. Maybe you can. Maybe you were going to the ballpark at that point. Was there a cultural
I
shift
was, yeah.
once? Was there a cultural shift and attitude towards baseball because there was so many other things starting to happen at that point, where the American pastime of baseball might have been already like were fathers taking their kids to games in 1965, or were kids more concerned about getting drafted? The Beatles had come and changed how everybody looks at stuff. Like what was going on that you could have the great Milwaukee Brave team that had done so well, and then shortly thereafter, was it a cultural shift? Did like people even cared? Were fathers bringing their kids to games? I think about stuff like that. What caused the Milwaukee Braves, which to me clearly works? It clearly worked. I don't get what happened. Why did the public suddenly become that
Jimmy,
disinterested?
let me read you their roster. I looked it up. This was not
Yeah.
a bad team. They won 86 games.
Okay.
But here's the lineup. You're gonna be shocked. Catcher, Joe Torre. And he hit 291. First base, Felipe Alou, 297.
Fantastic.
Second base, a guy named Frank Bowling, who hit 264. Woody
Fine.
Woodward, who was a light hitting shortstop. Third base was Matthews, 32 and 95. Good numbers, right?
Wonderful. Great.
Left field,
Fantastic.
Rico Cardi in left field.
Good player. What did he do?
He was I think he must have been injured, but he hit 310.
Yeah, he was a good
And
hitter.
you had Aaron. Aaron's numbers were 32, 89, and 318. Good ball club.
Is Necro on the Braves at that point yet? Like throwing games? I mean, like the pitching staff was probably not too bad either. They won 86 games.
Well, their ace was Tony Cloninger. I remember him.
Oh yeah, sure. He was a pitching coach later for the Yanks.
24 and 11 that year.
Wow.
Yeah,
Big Tony. Tony ate a lot of pizza when he was on the Yankees. I don't know if you remember him when he was coaching us. I'm surprised.
No, I don't remember that, but I do remember.
Yeah.
I think he hit. Is he the guy? I think he hit 2 grand slams in one game.
Wow.
I think that's his claim to fame. But you had a guy named Wade Blassingame who was 16 and 10.
Okay.
You had Ken Johnson, 13 and 8. Both serviceable pitchers. And
sure.
even Denny LeMaster. Well, he had an off season that season, and another guy named Billy Odell, who was also a decent pitcher.
Wow.
And you had Necro. I think that might have been Necro's first season. He only started one game that season.
Okay. All right. So Necro's about to arrive. Interesting. Right. They got a good lineup. I like the lineup. You got Joe Torre in that lineup, and Eddie Matthews and Hank Aaron and Rico Cardi. You got some good hitters going on
Felipe
there.
Alou. I mean, come on.
Yes. Yeah.
Matthews.
You got you got a fistful of good hitters. I don't understand why attendance crashed and burned. I wonder if it was going around the league in general. Like, look, I know the Yankees weren't drawing that low, but I do wonder about it. The cultural shift had to look at some point, and we all know it historically. When the hippie thing comes into fruition in the '60s, there is definitely a yeah. So what about the old days? So what about the greatest generation? So what about Babe Ruth? So what about the old times and how things were? We're changing stuff. So I wonder if the young people were as inclined to go to a baseball game as they might have been during the '40s and the
Yeah.
'50s, or you know what I'm saying? I wonder.
Now you're talking to the wrong person because I was a 10-year-old kid, and at that time,
Right.
my dad was a service manager for a Chevy dealership, and one of his customers, I probably tell you this, was the PR director for the Mets,
Okay.
and we could get press passes on demand. You don't think I bugged,
Nice.
even though I was a Yankee fan, you don't think I'm getting
Oh.
free tickets to
Oh
Major
yeah.
League ball games.
Oh
So I
yeah.
mean, I went as well, and I did see the Braves that year in '65. I do remember that because they were still the Milwaukee Braves.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm
Yeah.
I'm
I
not
don't get it.
I'm not representative of the culture. I think you might have a very good point there that the
Right.
shift was America's pastime is a traditional value, and a lot of the youth were rebelling against the traditional values.
Right. Exactly. And I do feel like, as far as star power, once like to me, Mickey was probably the biggest star power of his generation as far as the commercial accessibility. The guy was big time, all right, and he was like the face of MLB in a lot of ways. He was probably the guy that they made the most money off, and Mickey was the guy. But Mickey was really an old school. By the '60s, Mickey is starting to slow down. By the time, by the way, it's like '65 or so where the Yankees crash and burn. When the Braves move, the Yankees are crashing and burning. Baseball is losing its sexy identity.
Right.
What happens between it's guys like Reggie that save it. Once free agency kicks in the '70s, my dad was taking me to games. A lot of the kids I knew, they were going back to baseball games, but the culture had changed enormously between 1965 and '77. Agreed.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
I feel like there was a blasé time period there for a while where there wasn't a huge superstar doing something on Mickey was like, they needed to get to the next big star. And I feel like Reggie might have been that next big star as far as marketability. God, they named the candy bar after
Well,
him. Come
Reggie in
on.
'69, Reggie was on a pace. They thought he was going to hit 60 home runs in '69.
Right. What did he wind up with?
I think
Like
he went up with
47 or
47
something?
that year.
Yeah, 47. Yeah, he
Yeah,
was well
yep.
on pace. Yeah. They
But
needed
he
the
had
next
somebody by the All Star, like he was on a good pace.
Yeah, they needed the next star. And you know what? It's happened in football too. When Frank Gifford retired, New York didn't have a football star. Frank Gifford was a big star. People don't realize it wasn't just years
Huge
later.
in New York, absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, he was a good-looking man. I mean, and
Matinee
he was just
idol. Yep.
yeah. He was some of those old black and white shots of Frank Gifford playing for the Giants at Yankee Stadium will give you chills, man. It was big time star. And it took years for that void to be filled. It wound up being filled by Joe Namath.
Right. Oh
Which
yeah.
which
Perfectly.
it's mind-boggling to see that the Braves moved, man. It really is.
So the Athletics win 55. KC that first
Yeah.
year 1,393,000. By
Okay.
67, they're down to 726. They moved to
Yeah.
Oakland, but
Big
it
jump.
didn't pick up that much.
No.
837, 466. Not much different.
Right.
And
You know,
here we are.
it's interesting that Kansas City wanted and was kind of ready for a team, just not that one. Isn't that
Well,
weird?
then 2 years later, they get the Royals, and they've been
Right.
there for now 55 years.
Yeah, the Royals have done quite well. By the way,
They've
what do
they've
you
done
feel?
pretty okay. Yep,
How
absolutely.
how, how do you feel about there's motions that they want to get rid of Kaufman Stadium? I would try to save it. What do you think about that? I think Kaufman Stadium's awesome with the waterfall.
Oh, I lived there for 4 years. I would say I probably went to about 40 home games. I love the place.
Wow.
Yeah,
Would you say it's worth saving? Why would they destroy it? I would keep it. The longer you keep it,
yeah.
I think it increases its historical value. Kansas City's got a lot to be proud of over there. They've done well
Oh
over the
yeah.
years.
Now, even when I lived there, though, it was totally a football town. They love their Chiefs, and now they love them
Oh,
even more because they're actually good. They weren't that
oh
good when
yeah.
I was there.
Oh no, they have a dynasty now. Love them or hate them.
Although,
I obviously do not love the Kansas City Chiefs. So
no, we did when I lived there. We did get Joe Montana in his last couple of years, and that
who?
a little bit of temporary excitement, but nothing happened.
Yeah,
But let me
well,
see
I'll tell
who.
you something. Something did happen though, because Joe Montana was declared dead and buried. Went to the Kansas City Chiefs, a struggling franchise, and got them to the AFC Championship game. And I remember that. And I remember that was a pretty cool time period for the Chiefs.
Oh
So
yeah, no, I
no,
mean,
yeah,
and
and that's
I
cool that you
mean,
got to experience that. By the way, that's
oh
very
yeah,
cool.
I remember they played the Buffalo Bills in the AFC Championship game, and Montana threw a pass and he hit his thumb on the helmet
Yep.
of one of the Bills linemen. That was it. I
Yes.
mean, the minute that happened, it's like we're done.
Yes. Yes.
But
Love Joe
it took a
Montana.
hell of a
Love Joe
ride though.
Montana.
All
Oh
right,
yeah.
I love
Oh yeah.
I love the Seattle Pilots.
Seattle Pilots. How many years was this? A 1 year wonder, Benny?
1 year only. Yep,
16,
1 year only.
69?
Yep, this is the and Jim Bouton when he wrote Ball Four. That was his. He played for the Seattle Pilots.
Wow.
Yep,
So what
moved
happened?
to
What happened here? What's the story with this wonderful 1 year wonder?
they drew 677, 944. Moved to Milwaukee, 933, 690. But they got a team, what, 7 years later?
Right. Mariners.
Seattle.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
So,
Yes. Same year as the Blue Jays. Correct.
right. No,
Yeah.
I just,
It's interesting that it didn't work at first there, and then it obviously has worked for the Mariners. But you know what though? Presentation is everything. We talk about it when we discuss stuff on our wrestling shows that we do. Presentation is half the battle. Where were the pilots playing? It wasn't like back in the day. People forget, but the Kingdome and places like the Astrodome were actually new and considered modern. The
I
Mariners,
believe, and I could be wrong if anybody in the chat room knows this,
yeah,
but I believe, I want to say it was called SICKS Stadium. And I
yes,
believe it was their,
yes,
it was their Pacific Coast League ballpark, and it was
right.
very old. So yeah, they
Yes.
really didn't have much of a chance. You're playing in a
Yeah.
rickety old stadium that was,
Yeah.
a AAA stadium.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And
They
when they
did.
came back, like you said, they came back to a different ballpark.
Yeah. They were like basically the city was offered like a really bad offshoot of White Castle. It's like, no, I don't want this.
Yeah,
If you're gonna give me my crap burger, at least make it like White Castle level. What kind of presentation is this? Here's your team. We're gonna call them the Pilots. By the way, that logo is ridiculous. Can I say that?
yeah,
Look at that
you can
thing.
say that.
That's absurd. What is that supposed to be? Oh, I get it. There's the captain's ship wheel. There's a lot of rain, I guess. I don't know what's going on there. It's just I'm confused by it. And you're gonna have them play it like where are they playing? I come on, dude. This is terrible. Was the food free at least?
And I
I'm not.
remember the manager was Joe Schultz, who probably
It
was
sounds like a Charlie Brown comic strip. Was Joe
yeah.
Schlabotnik in the lineup by any chance? Joe Schlabotnik.
If anybody has not read the book Ball Four by Jim Bouton,
Oh
it
God.
stands the test of time. It was a very, very good book.
It was very controversial.
Well, Jim Bouton was the early Deity Mansfield, right? He broke kayfabe.
Correct. He did. He did. People were not happy.
Nope. Nope. No, sir. All right. Who we got next? Here we go again.
Oh no.
So they lasted a total of 10 seasons, or 11.
All
I'm
right.
sorry, 11. So they
That's
and
baffling.
they didn't change much. So in 61, their first year, they drew about 600,000. 71, 655. Now, strangely though, the Rangers in 72, they drew
Yeah.
about the same, 662, almost identical. Now it
Right.
picked up after that. Maybe
Yeah.
maybe like you said, that's a good point. The whole presentation thing. Maybe they temporarily were playing in a crappy park until their new park was ready, because
Right.
they've drawn very well over the years.
Now, if you were referring to are you referring to the Texas Rangers, Ben?
Yes, sir.
Okay, here's the deal with the Texas Rangers, though, over all the decades, because I've been watching a lot of very interesting videos on older stadiums and why they eventually were, torn down or relocated the stadium for the franchise. Texas always was tortured. Let me tell you something. The physical experience of going to a game and watching a team, you don't want to be that uncomfortable. And for decades, no matter what stadium the Rangers were playing in, the sun was unbearable. The heat and the day games were absolute torture. At night, the mosquitoes would come out. It was like the fan physically of all the teams that are out there to root for. Those Ranger fans over decades suffered the most. Going to a day game, you'd basically be melting all game.
Yeah.
They finally got it fixed, and I think in the last 20 years or so, they got that fixed, where the fan can actually go and not turn, into a puddle on the floor. So I think that's always affected the Rangers' attendance. It could have been through the roof, decades ago, probably. There's definitely a market in Texas.
I remember in '73. I don't know if you remember this. They brought some kid up, like not up. They signed him right out of high school, David Clyde, and they threw him right in the major leagues. And I guess he was only supposed to make 1 or 2 starts, but he drew so well that they kept him. They kept him with the team, but they kind of ruined him. He needed to get some minor league seasoning, and I mean, I think he bounced around for 3 or 4 seasons, but I think they ruined him by doing that.
I was happy when the Rangers recently won a World Series because of my dislike for the Houston Astros in general. Sorry, folks, and I always felt like the Rangers, always had a rough go of things. So when they finally got a championship, didn't they have that really good team that lost a couple of World Series in a row around the early 2010s?
They did, yeah.
They were kind of a tortured fan base, and after all, the name of their team is Texas. So I wanted to see them get a title. Like I'm enjoying the Florida Panthers right now winning Stanley Cups because they've been around a long time, been through a lot of crap, and Tampa Bay is the team that's won the Stanley Cups, and I want the team that says the state logo on it to get something. So
sure.
I was happy for the Texas Rangers. Silly as it sounds.
And we come to my
there's your team, your favorite team of all, the Expos.
I love the Montreal Expos.
Is it Benny? Is it because of your adult film career that the name Expos?
No, all right. I'm gonna tell a childhood story. In I guess it would have been 69. I was 13, 14. And what I did was, and no word processors back then, no PCs. You wanted to write something, you had to write a letter. I wrote a handwritten letter, and I didn't write one and make copies. I wrote 30 letters to 30 different teams. I had all their spring training addresses, right? Wow. Mailed them all out, and I would say probably, and I mean, you're talking about like back then, getting mail as a kid was a big deal. Now it sucks. I mean,
now I get
bill for free prostate exams, but I mean, I was getting some good stuff in the mail back then, and but the Expo sent me this great package with a press guide and some decals, and oh my god, little nice stuff. I mean, of every team. The Yankees sent me a nice team picture, really nice team picture, and a letter, very formal.
Right.
But no, the Expos sent me the best stash, so I just developed an affinity.
How did you in that year, 1969? How on earth did you get the addresses of all these teams?
I had some kind of baseball magazine.
Interesting.
I think it was baseball, either Baseball Weekly or Baseball Digest.
Yeah, I believe it because back then they encouraged fan club type stuff and being able to contact the team through the mail, things like that. So that's really cool. That is really cool. So that's why you're so fond of the Montreal Expos. Very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, but the funny thing is, like, I was, I studied my baseball card. I was a knowledgeable baseball fan, and each letter I made it. I didn't say, oh, I really like your team. I would say, I think you guys are really good. You have, like the Expos. I think they got Ron Fairley. I'm trying to think who else they had. They had a couple of good players. Coco LeBoy.
I'll
Remember
tell
him?
you who they. I'll tell you who they had that it gets forgotten about. And if he had been during his career a Dodger or a Cardinal or a Met or a Yankee,
I know where you're going.
Steve Rogers would have been a Hall of Fame level
Oh
pitcher.
God, yeah. What a class guy.
Okay.
What
Steve
yeah,
Rogers was to the Montreal Expos what Dave Stieb was to the Toronto Blue Jays. And if they had been on
absolutely.
better teams, oh man, Steve Rogers, a guy named Warren Cromartie, a kid named Gary Carter, a kid named Andre Dawson. The Expos had a lot of good players over the years, and I will
The
say
big
this:
cat, Galarraga.
yeah, Andres Galarraga, the big cat. Yeah, and I will say this about their uniform: when they wore the baby blue, that worked. That was a great uniform. Okay, that I did like about them when they would, which one I'm referring, the baby blue uniform with the logo and everything. I was like, okay, this works. But what a shame though. They never had the cash. They never really had the backing of the city when you really think about it. Yeah, there might have been one or two times that the city paid attention, but not you can't get out of the Canadians' shadow. You can't. It is Canada. It is a hockey town. It is the hockey town. It is the Montreal Canadiens. That's what works there. The end. Benny? That's what works there. Canadians. It just didn't work out in Montreal for the Expos at the end of the day. Very unfortunate. Looks like Benny's hit a button, folks. All right. It looks like I've lost my partner. So I guess we're going to call it a week, folks. We're going to wrap it up. You've been watching the Baseball Bums. And until next week, or whenever Benny turns this off, later.
I apologize. My computer just completely blanked out. No, I that was bizarre. I lost Jimmy, but we were pretty much at the end of the road. That was my last. That was my last team. So I want to thank everybody for joining us and hanging out with us. We'll be back next week. I'll check in with Mr. Pharaoh. I apologize. I mean, that has never happened before. It wasn't even that this app locked up. My whole computer locked up where I had to shut it down. Once I restored, I was able to get back in. So very bizarre goings on here. Maybe I don't know. Maybe my computer is not a Yankee fan. Who knows? But in any event, thanks, guys. Have a great evening, and we will see you back next week. There's Jimmy. Hang on. I don't know what happened.
You ding dong. I tried calling you too. Live TV, folks. Is there still folks in the chat room? Because I just saw them. I'm like, oh my God, these poor people. What's going on here?
Yeah, that was bizarre. I mean, we're pretty much done. The only other team, I think. Let me.
It's hilarious. Are they still out there? I'm just curious. Oh, sorry,
Let's
folks.
see. What do we got? All right, let me.
Yeah, we got Kingman.
Hang on one second. Yeah, we got all that. Yeah, that's the last one.
What happened? The computer decided to circumcise you.
My
Had enough of your
computer
film adult?
completely locked up, which it has never
Wow.
done that before.
What are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? So, what did we learn in this episode?
Yeah,
We learned
I
the
don't know what
tragedies of.
happened, and it
We
wasn't
learned
just this app.
Well, what did we learn? What did we learn this episode?
It was
we learned that
my entire computer able to get back on this page, but
yeah,
on this app rather. Very strange.
yeah. What are you gonna do? Well,
But the Oakland A's, yeah, maybe
Yeah.
Walt, you're right. Maybe it overheated. Who knows?
Oh, it's a cauldron out there right now. That's for sure.
We learned
And
that
now the
Dave
Oakland
Kingman
A's-
isn't as bad as everybody thinks.
Right.
And we learned that baseball fans can be fair weather friends, right?
Yeah, sure. And culture shifts
as
might
Daniel
have something
Bryan
to do with
said, fickle, right? They
Yeah.
get very fickle.
and culture shifts also might have had something to do with the mid-'60s
That
thing
that's
going
really
on.
like mid-'60s. I have never ever thought of that, but I think that is a very, very good point. So yeah. I think before we crash again, Mr. Pharaoh, why don't you take us home?
You've been watching the Baseball Bums. Thanks for hanging in there. And until next week, later again. Later.
Later.